Trump warns Iran to make nuclear deal, or next attack will be far worse. Adani lawyers reach out after US moves to serve summons via email. California's Newsom accuses TikTok of suppressing Trump criticism. Keep dreaming. NATO chief says Europe can't defend itself without US. India, EU reach landmark trade deal, tariffs to be slashed on most goods. US President Donald Trump has warned Iran to negotiate a deal on nuclear weapons, saying any future US military action would be far more severe if Tehran refuses. In a social media post on Tuesday, Trump urged Iran to quote-unquote come to the table and agree to a deal that would prevent it from developing nuclear weapons. He said time was running out and repeated that a US naval armada was heading toward the region. Trump, who withdrew the United States from the 2015 nuclear agreement with Iran during his first term, said a previous warning to Tehran had been followed by a US military strike in June. He warned that, quote, the next attack will be far worse. Iran responded with its own warning. Ali Shamkhani, an advisor to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, said any US military action would prompt Iran to retaliate against the United States, Israel and their supporters. The exchange comes amid a buildup of US forces in the Middle East, raising fears of further escalation between Washington and Tehran. Lawyers representing Indian billionaire Gautam Adani and his nephew Sagar Adani have contacted the US Securities and Exchange Commission after the regulator sought court permission to serve summons by email, according to a report by the Indian Express. On January 22, the day after the SEC filed a motion in a New York court requesting approval for alternative service methods, the law firm Sullivan & Cromwell contacted the SEC on behalf of the Adanis to discuss the matter. The following day, the lawyers asked the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York to delay ruling on the SEC's request while discussions were ongoing. The court directed both sides to update it by January 26. In a status filing, Adani's lawyers requested additional time until January 30 to finalize their position, citing ongoing talks and time zone differences as both clients are based in India. The court accepted the request. The SEC had earlier sought permission to serve the summons by email after efforts under the Hague Convention failed. According to the Indian Express, India's Ministry of Law and Justice declined twice to serve the notices, raising technical and legal objections. The Adani Group has faced market pressure amid the developments, with its listed companies losing billions of dollars in market value following news of the SEC's court action. California Governor Gavin Newsom has accused TikTok of suppressing content critical of US President Donald Trump and has launched a review to determine whether the platform's content moderation practices violate state law. Newsom's office said it had received reports and confirmed instances of content critical of Trump being limited on the app. The governor has asked the California Department of Justice to examine the issue. The move comes days after TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance, finalized a deal to create a majority US-owned joint venture aimed at protecting American user data and avoiding a nationwide ban. The deal, which places US data, algorithms and operations under new security measures, was praised by President Trump. TikTok denied the allegations. A company spokesperson said the issues were caused by a technical failure linked to a data center power outage, not intentional content suppression. The company said the outage may have led to bugs, slower loading times, or problems posting content. The dispute adds to ongoing scrutiny of TikTok's operations in the United States, particularly following its recent restructuring and heightened political sensitivity around content moderation. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte has warned that Europe cannot defend itself without the United States, amid renewed debate over the continent's military independence following tensions between Washington and its allies. Speaking to the European Parliament on Sunday, Rutte dismissed calls for Europe to stand alone militarily, saying reliance on the United States remains essential. His comments came after US President Donald Trump threatened to seize Greenland, an autonomous Danish territory, before backing down following talks with Rutte. The episode has fueled arguments among some European leaders that the continent should reduce its dependence on Washington. However, Rutte said replacing US military support would require European countries to massively increase defense spending and invest heavily in nuclear capabilities. He warned that without the United States, Europe would lose the protection of the US nuclear umbrella, which he described as the ultimate guarantee of the continent's security. France's Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot pushed back against Rutte's remarks, saying Europeans can and must take greater responsibility for their own security. India and the European Union have concluded a long-delayed free trade agreement aimed at boosting bilateral trade and reducing dependence on the United States amid rising global trade tensions. The deal will significantly cut tariffs on most goods traded between the two sides. The European Union said it expects the agreement to double its exports to India by 2032, with tariffs eliminated or reduced on nearly 97% of traded goods by value. European companies are expected to save around €4 billion in duties. Under the agreement, the EU will gradually remove tariffs on 99.5% of goods imported from India over 7 years. India said tariffs will be reduced to zero on key exports including marine products, leather, textiles, chemicals, rubber, base metals, and gems and jewelry. Agriculture-related products such as beef, dairy, rice, and sugar have been excluded from the deal. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi welcomed the agreement, calling it the mother of all deals, and saying it would create major opportunities for people in both India and Europe. The trade talks, which began more than 2 decades ago, gained momentum amid escalating US tariffs and growing uncertainty in global trade relations under President Donald Trump.